Ready, Karen? Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Richard Scotty. I'm the moderator for the continuation of our endorsement interviews. This is the Veterans in Politics endorsement interviews, now for Congressional District 1. We have a fantastic group of candidates here, and I want to welcome you all to the interviews. Thank you for attending. We have Chris Edwards, Charmaine Guss, Brian Landsberger, Herb Peters, William Bill Pojunis, Miguel, Mike Rodrigues, and Stan Vaughan. Each of you will have 1 minute to introduce yourselves. Then we'll begin with questioning from the panel members. We're going to ask the panel members to please limit your questions to 30 seconds if you can. This time, because we're going to be short on time, we're not going to ask any follow-up questions. So each panel member will ask you one question. You'll have 1 minute to respond. Melody Howard will be the official timekeeper. She'll signify by a beep on her phone or raising her hand when you have 10 seconds left, and then again when your time has expired. Are there any questions on how we're going to proceed? All right, let's go ahead and begin, and we'll just move from to the left to the right then for introductions. So we'll begin with Mr. Vaughan. Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Dr. Vaughan. I have a PhD in
microphone on.
Well, there we go.
We'll share mics here. Why don't I give you my mic, and then we can all share.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today. My name is Dr. Stan Vaughan. I have a PhD in accounting, and I think with the economic problems, that makes me one of the best qualified to deal with congressional budgets. I am currently the WCF World Chess Champion, and that does give me some name recognition. I noticed that the only candidate who is not here is the one that we really need to keep out, which is Dina Titus. And I'm going to Washington, D.C. to try to undo, not to do, but to try to undo a lot of the things that have been done. I am the independent American in the race, and I would encourage you to endorse any one of us here except Dina Titus, who is not here. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Guss, and as a teenager, I did welcome back the Vietnam vets, and I've always had a heart for the veterans, and I am totally appalled the way they treat our veterans right now, and I'm looking at a program for the vets about volunteering and taking the veterans personally, picking them up and taking them to their doctor appointments and hospitals. It's so bad that we have to go all the way to that extent. And so that's one of the reasons I'm running. I'm also running because I was a real estate agent and broker for 24 years. And I'm not happy what they did to my real estate business and what they did to our investments. And so I'm mad as heck, and I'm going to fight for businesses. And business is what's going to get our company back on our feet. Thank you for this opportunity.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. My name is Chris Edwards, running for the U.S. Congress in District Number 1. I've been working overseas, and I've seen what happens to countries when they don't do government correctly. I'm watching a lot of mistakes being made in Washington, D.C., and I want to go there and stop the mistakes that are being made and prevent any further ones. I'm a 25-year veteran with the U.S. Navy, made 5 major deployments to every hemisphere on the planet. My most recent 2 were in support of Kosovo on a presidential recall, and also a mobilization in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I went over to Bahrain to work as the Chief of Staff in Navy Region Southwest Asia in support of all our facilities within Central Command. And during that tour, I started taking over the expeditionary bases in Africa. So I've spent the last several years working in support of our troops in Africa and the Middle East.
You have 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And I thank you for that. We'll talk more.
Hello.
Hi. My name is Bill Pojunis. I'm also running in CD1 because of a couple of different things. Number one, our federal government is completely out of whack as far as spending is concerned. You cannot survive spending more money than you take in. You can't do it in your households. I can't do it in my business. The government sure as hell can't do it without borrowing 40 cents of every dollar from China. How good is that? That's the primary function. My background is very simple. I got involved with politics at the tender age of 6 when I was taken to an I Like Ike rally in Baltimore, Maryland by my mother. After that, I came home, grew up a little, took about 29 years off. Then I got involved with the Planning Commission in my hometown of Pennsylvania. We helped codify the laws, some of which have been in effect or on the books since 1700s. So we had to redo that whole codification system. As far as veterans concerned, I am a vet. I support the vets in most of everything that they do.
Hello, I'm Brian Landsberger, also a candidate for Congressional District 1. I want to thank you for this opportunity to come here and spend a few minutes with my fellow candidates here. I will mention that, as brief as this is, all of us do have websites where you can get good details on our positions and ourselves. I'd like to thank the veterans in politics for being here, not only conducting this, but for your presence. The veterans really do need a voice in the community, both while they're in service and after they're out of service back into the community. There's probably hasn't been a time since the Vietnam War where veteran care is more important, and it's a big issue now, and it will be in Congress. Whoever is in there needs to represent the veterans and watch out, not both in the country and in the state of Nevada there. My background is 40 years military, university, and corporate world, and I'm an expert in product and process improvement. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Rodrigues, and I also want to thank you for the opportunity to be here together with our distinguished congressional candidates. I'm also running in Congressional District 1. I'm a 35-year resident of Southern Nevada. I am a school principal. I've been with the Clark County School District now for about 22 years. I also teach at the University of Phoenix. I am also a veteran, both the United States Air Force and the Nevada Army National Guard. And I'm running for the future of America and for America's children, as well as the adults. When I say children, with emphasis, because as a principal, I work with kids every day. And I want those kids to have the same bright future and the hope that I had as a boy growing up in the land of opportunity, the land of dreams, that respects and rewards hard work, study, sacrifice, and discipline.
That's all we got.
Hi, my name is Herb Peters, candidate for Congressional District Number 1, and thank you also. I've had 3 careers. I'm in my 3rd career right now. My first career was on the farm and started working when I was 8 years old, and I saw the rewards and the challenges and risks of being in private industry. Went to college, got a job with the Federal Aviation Administration, and worked as an electrical engineer, an electronic engineer, and finally an aerospace engineer. And I enjoyed the rewards of a wonderfully challenging job and saw the opportunity for corruption in government. And as I see our federal government right now, we're spending $3.9 billion a day more than we take in. We take in about 6 and spend about 10.9, 9.9. Talk to you later.
Thank you, sir. All right. Does somebody have any tape, first of all?
That's what I was doing.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, we're going to begin with questions from the panel members now, and why don't we start all the way at the end with Mr. Webster. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, simple. Indecisiveness in Congress of late is horrible. What can you do, each of you, to answer this, to ease that and make a damn decision, or influence others to decide? Mr.
Could you repeat the question? Because with him doing the tape, I couldn't hear that.
Okay, you heard the question, correct?
No, he needs you to repeat it.
Okay, indecisiveness in Congress has been crazy lately. Terrible.
We're speaking of...
Hold on. He needs... Hold on. Mr. Vaughan requested that the question be re-asked. So go ahead and ask the question again, please, now that we don't have the tape, so that everybody on the panel completely understands the question.
Okay, indecisiveness in Congress has been lately. Okay. What can each of you do to help ease that, make a decision, and influence others to make it streamlined? It's insane.
Indecisiveness in Congress. The Congress is way over its head. The U.S. Constitution grants the government enumerated rights. And the Congress, in the enumerated rights area, they need to make the laws that are appropriate. What we've done is we've gone into areas that are not enumerated, and we've gotten involved in things we shouldn't be involved in. For starters, education. We need to get the government, the federal government, out of education. Education has gone downhill since the federal government has started financing education. In other areas, they've done the same thing. Medicine. Social, just a little background on the government. They run Social Security. Social Security is broke. They run the post office. The post office is broke. When we started Medicare, Medicare was estimated to cost $8 billion a year. Now it's over $100 billion a year.
As a principal, I have to make decisions every day. And I work together with a leadership team. And we have a streamlined process where we brainstorm ideas. We put those ideas on a board. We then look at both pros and cons. And then we come to a decision. That may seem simplified, but I believe that we do need to get back to simplifying our process in Washington. I would agree with candidate Peters that our federal government has gone and chased too many rabbits. And so I would bring back a simplified process, and then I have the courage to make a decision, whether or not the decision is a popular one.
Well, obviously this is a problem and we all recognize it. I'd like to say that it's to fix a problem like that, you really need to get at what is the root cause of the problem. And it turns out to be polarization and developing a kind of a group think within the different parties there rather than individual thinking and individual ideas. One way to get around that would be to agree on a central or common vision on what you're trying to prove before you propose legislation. So again, and I would agree with the previous people, they need to get together, put their party affiliations aside, and decide what is the real vision for America that we're trying to achieve here.
Having been in sales and marketing for 35 years, my entire career was based around getting people to make decisions. They didn't make a decision, I didn't get paid. So I also learned that I've got to make decisions. And who am I going to talk to? What's going to happen? If you get to Congress and you run into this situation, the simplest thing to do is say, listen, people, we only have to be right 51% of the time. So you sit there and debate all this nonsense as long as you want to, but the bottom line is make a decision and move forward. If you sit there and you can debate, I don't care if you're the best debater in the world, that doesn't help if you can't make a decision. And that's what we've got to face. Sometimes we will make good decisions, sometimes we'll make bad decisions. The idea is make the decision.
I think it comes down to three things: leadership, planning, and management. I think you have to have leaders who know what the vision is for the country and that the country will accept it. You have to thoroughly plan and plan smartly so that you can get there. And then you have to manage it. If you do those three things, a lot of the chaos and confusion and mess in Washington will go away. Those are the core three things, and we do very well in the military. Strategic planning is what I did for the past several years, so I understand the process very well. I think I can bring those skills and qualities to Washington.
I think that to start with, they have bills that have way too many different topics or subjects in it. And so to start with, they should start with like one ideal, and that way when they discuss it, they don't go off on a rabbit trail to another, and they never get anything decided. So I think that's important. And as a business owner, I had to make decisions every day. So I know what it was like to make those decisions. I did those to keep in business for 24 years. Thank you.
Yes, I would agree with many of the things that everybody on this panel said. One of the reasons that I've gotten 2 previous endorsements for Veterans in Politics is my thoroughness on research. I'm probably the only one on the panel who has researched every one of Dina Titus's 1,679 votes that she did while she was in Congress. One of the big problems that we have as an accountant that I see is that we're trying to do too many things. I would cut and eliminate all departments except the necessary Defense Department, State Department, Treasury Department for the most part, probably. We're doing way too many things. We're voting on too many nonsense issues like what to name a post office or to declare something a particular day. It's eating up a lot of the time that you're in there, and it's just ridiculous. I served as a 4-H state senator responsible for drafting legislation in Kentucky. I have experience in drafting legislation. As an independent, I could serve on a lot more committees than anyone else would be able to, because if you're in a party, you're doled out with all these different things.
Leo, we can go to you. Why don't we start with Stan and work our way back that way?
That sounds good.
All right, thank you.
I'm a technology consultant specializing in healthcare industry, and a lot of my clients right now are making the decision to no longer accept Medicare and Medicaid because of Obamacare. And many of my clients are deciding to retire early. So it's hurting my business, but separate from that is seniors, even though they're going to have wonderful health care, are not going to have anyone to go to and to take care of them. So what do you see as your responsibility to fix that? And maybe, do you want to undo Obamacare? Do you want to fix it? Do you want to, leave it as is?
Okay, I'm very hopeful that the Supreme Court will strike down the unconstitutionality of Obamacare, and that I won't have to address that in November. But you're absolutely right. With the chess club, I'm on the boards of the World Chess Federation, American Chess Association, and everything. At the Nevada State Chess Association, we are in One World Wellness Group. And they have a lot of Medicare situations. One of the doctors has put in over $2 million in Medicare reimbursement claims. And what the government ends up doing is saying, well, we'll pay you $500,000. Then they agree to that, and then they're waiting for months and months to get repaid. It is destroying the capability of doctors to be able to provide good care. We've got to eliminate Obamacare. One of the other things is that the second biggest, it's very, very important, I'm sorry to go over on this, but for example, Google was the second biggest donor to the Obama administration campaign, and they are being paid about $800,000 by the government to every time that somebody puts in the search engine Obamacare, it always gets redirected to the government. And that's avoiding any ability for people to, have a different opinion on it.
Thank you.
I'd like to eliminate Obamacare completely and get the government out of medicine and doctors, period. Thank you.
First of all, Obamacare must go because it will not only impact the seniors in a very negative way, it will impact everybody because of the damage it'll do to the small businesses across the country. So Obamacare is a loser one way or another that simply has to go. I think that there is a crisis with the health care, as you talked about, not just a matter of whether or not we can afford it, but whether or not we're going to have anybody to provide it. And the fact of the matter is the government keeps chasing more and more people out by more and more regulations, more and more rules, and then paying them less and less. It's simply unsustainable. The folks in government who've been making those kinds of plans do not understand the economics, they do not understand medicine, they do not understand health. Therefore, they must be stopped. We must have a much more thoughtful plan. We must have people who really understand the process, really understand the business, and really know how to make it happen. We have to pull government back out.
Obamacare is unconstitutional, it has to go. End of story. So should everybody who voted for it. This is just asinine. I mean, you had a 2,700-page bill dumped in your lap, you had 18 hours to vote on it, and you voted on it? What are you, out of your mind? That's just the first part. Okay. Healthcare has been affected by government intervention. If the government got the hell out of the way and let it function as a free market enterprise, which it was designed to be, it would be fine. But the problem is the government comes in and says, Emergency rooms, you must take everybody who comes in, whether they can pay you or not. Well, guess who pays for it? We all do. Okay, then they intervene on every other, there's just too much intervention, too much regulation. The things that Chris said are absolutely true. And that's what we've got to do. Obamacare's got to go.
Okay, pretty much mostly what Bill just said there, but let me add a few quick words. Yeah, the reason that people aren't taking, or caregivers aren't taking it, is because the government has introduced false savings by artificially reducing rates in Medicare and Medicaid. Obviously, you need to respond to the market. That part of the free market that works in medical care needs to be preserved. The idea, what we need is a simple medical plan that's more comprehensive instead of picking winners and losers with different complicated government policies.
I too would agree with my fellow candidates that Obamacare needs to go, and I also believe that it is unconstitutional. I also believe that it's breaking the backs and will break the backs of small businesses and moderate-sized businesses.
Keep going.
And I do believe that we need to take care of our citizenry, especially our seniors. We need to provide health care that is affordable and also very diverse, because of their needs are very diverse, including a process and a means whereby to provide the medicines that so many depend upon. So I would also agree and say Obamacare needs to go.
Mr. Peters, do you want to come over and use this one? Is that easier for you?
Okay, next time.
Okay.
I agree with my fellow panel members that Obamacare has to go. I was around when LBJ established Medicare, and I saw how the cost of hospitalization went up. Just after Medicare came along, I went to the hospital and spent a week in the hospital, cost $100 a day. And now probably the cost to go to the hospital is $1,000 to $2,000 a day. The government tries to do better, and every time they stick their nose into something, they make it worse. We need to get the government out, because private sector ran the hospital, the medical programs across the country without a doubt the best system in the world, and now the government is getting in the way and destroying our best system in the world.
Mr. Faust, you're up.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Mr. Vaughan, I noticed that when you introduced yourself that you declared yourself as an American independent. I would like to know what each of you is running as, starting with Ms. Guss.
Republican.
Mr. Edwards.
Republican.
Mr. Pojunis.
Libertarian.
Very nice.
Republican.
And also Republican.
All right, very good. Let me ask you this. If you were in well, actually, I'd like to ask one more quick question. Mr. Landsberger, can you define the perimeters of your district? Very quickly, please.
Right. Quickly, up to the north, Lake Mead, down to the south, Russell. If you go to the west, it's Decatur. Durango. Knew it started with a D. And then Hollywood to the east.
So you're over on the west side, basically.
Right.
All right.
Well, actually, I should say,
We go all the way to Nellis.
we are on the west side here. The district is the heart.
To each of you, if you were elected to Congress, and this is a two-question, what would be your biggest budget cut, your emphasis on your biggest budget cut, and what law would you repeal?
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
Anyone who doesn't say Obamacare.
Obamacare, because we've already looked at it. He said it would save $2.1 million. We find that it's going to actually cost $4.7 billion. So now you're looking at something like $6.8 billion more than what they promised. That's the obvious.
And what law would you repeal today if you could?
I would also repeal cap and trade, which I call bait and switch, HR 2454. It's going to cost we have mainly a Hispanic district that's poor, and it's going to cost each one of those families about an extra $3,100 a year starting in about 2 or 3 years from now on their energy and related type things. And our families in this district simply cannot afford that extra $3,100 a year.
Thank you, sir.
Obamacare, number one. Also, what I'd like to do is make a law that we can't make any more laws until we clean up all the laws we have.
So you want to make a law rather than repeal laws?
One law saying we can't make any more until we repeal all the ones we have that we don't need. And we
so you want to make
plenty.
lawmaking illegal. I like that.
Exactly.
Mr. Edwards?
I guess Obamacare would be the law to repeal, and that would be the most expensive one that we currently have on the books. But beyond that, I'd say that there are so many other ways to save money within the federal government that there's not just one law, there's too many that are still on the books that need to be repealed.
So you want to get rid of them all?
Not all, I just said too many.
Most of them, all right.
I have a proposal that we take the entire Code of Federal Regulations, divide it among the 535 representatives in Washington, and say, do not pass anything else until you go through this morass of regulations and see what has been passed 150 years ago, which is no longer valid, and go through all these things, remove all the unnecessary regulations, the outmoded regulations, and get down to something that's specialized and streamlined for today's world. That's the primary function. I mean, why does Congress go into session every year feeling that they have to pass more laws? We have more than enough laws on the books. We have more than enough regulation to deal with for 50 lifetimes. So just get rid of these things and streamline what we've got in there.
Okay, besides the obvious Obamacare, I would like to go through a total revision of our tax codes for both personal income tax and corporate income tax. I think, again, we need to set a vision here of having a fair, comprehensive, simple, easy to understand, and also an efficient system for taxation. I think we'll
How about no personal income tax?
Amen.
Well, no, I think
there's plenty other ways to tax.
There are, and again, I'm open for the vision. I think right now it seems to be a functioning system. The trouble is all the loopholes in there.
So it's not a functioning system.
Mr.
Rodrigues, please.
I too would agree with the panel here and repealing, of course, Obamacare in terms of saving our nation a large sum of money. The law specifically that I would work to repeal is Roe versus Wade. I believe that abortion is nothing less than murder. And so I would work very diligently to repeal Roe versus Wade.
How would you support cuts in education?
First of all, I think that the Federal Department of Education needs to be either cut or significantly reduced, and then give back the authority to the states. Now, as a principal, I have seen that the Title I, we'll take, for example, Title I, where the United States government gives hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to certain schools, those dollars really have not made a difference in terms of student achievement. They've made things nice and pretty, but they haven't increased achievement. So I would work to change that.
Thank you. We need to come back here to Mr. Peters.
The first department I would want to eliminate is the Department of Education in its entirety. Education is too important for the government to be involved in it. Ever since the government has gotten involved in education quality, SAT scores have gone downhill, and I'm talking about the federal government. The other law that I would like to repeal is the war on drugs. It's a phony war. It's putting people in prison unnecessarily and costing us $30 billion a year to run that war on drugs. And I'd like to add that our government has been going downhill since 1900. It hasn't been going downhill since 2008 or since 2004. It's since 1900, for over 110 years. And we need to repeal probably almost all the laws that are enacted since 1900.
Thank you. Mr. Lowry.
Right now, currently there's about 1,500 veterans who are dying every year waiting for medical services and benefits from the VA. Myself, I was applied for some veterans benefits due to an injury a year ago. and just received paperwork back asking for more details. How would you fix the VA, and how would you go about making sure that veterans are properly taken care of, not ending up in jails, ending up in veterans courts, not ending up in UMC? How would you take care of our veterans properly and morally? Start with Mr. Rodrigues.
Well, I would agree with you that we need to fix that. I myself applied for benefits and was also turned down. Not only delayed, but just turned down. So we need to create a process where we take care of our veterans from the point that they enter the service and the point from which they're discharged. The government needs to care for them, as it were, from cradle to grave, so to speak, and to streamline the process so that when they exit the military, there is a more comprehensive way of analyzing their needs. And then if we can create a program that also provides timely checkpoints so that the veterans can check into hospitals and then have the opportunity to meet with physicians so that they can have regular checkups, so that they can be given the kind of medical attention and care that they need for the rest of their lives.
Should they be given the ability to go outside the VA system and go directly to the hospital?
No follow-ups. We're on time.
Come on, Rob. Sorry. Get with the program. It's an important question.
That's a good prep.
Obviously, the intention of the government at this time is to take care of the veterans, but it's obviously is broken in certain ways. One of those is the same problem that's in medical care for everyone in this country, and that is the overcomplication in the systems that work against each other in those ways. So clearly, the Congress needs to address this problem, make it very simple and very straightforward for all veterans to know what care they get and how to get it, and to deliver that care.
Streamline the bureaucracy. There is way too much bureaucracy at every level involving with VA care. It's got to be a simpler system. I mean, we can handle this. Active duty, we can handle it, right? When you get out and you come back home, then it's like you said, you have to apply for benefits, and then sometimes you're denied. Then you have to go through an appeal process. And it should not be that way. It should just be a very simple thing. You come in, do you need the care? Okay, get it. Give it to them. End of story.
This is a very important question, and it does affect millions of people. The VA suffers from the same thing that so much of government does. No real vision, no real planning, no real management. That's what it really goes back to. They don't know exactly what they want to provide, how to provide it, therefore they don't plan for it correctly, and therefore they don't execute it. There must be much more competition involved. And I would also say TRICARE must absolutely be reformed and should not be the monopoly on that care.
Part of privatizing would be one thing that would be helpful, because they usually do things right so that they could get more care, faster care. And also sponsoring a bill to get more money to the vets' hospitals, the vets' clinics, so that they have more people working and faster care.
Okay. As a veteran myself, Rob, this is a very good question, and one that I think is very, very important. I want to reiterate, Obamacare costs $4.7 trillion, not billion. But at the same time, my opponent, Dina Titus, showed her disdain not only by not being here today, but she voted against H.R. 1500. This would have appropriated $13.3 billion, not trillion like Obamacare, but a billion, a very small amount, $13.3 billion to go to the Department of Veterans Affairs for leukemia, exposure of veterans of Agent Orange, Parkinson's disease, and heart disease. She voted no on that. All right.
On veterans, there are many homeless veterans, and I believe that the U.S. military should open their bases so that any veteran who comes home and is homeless can live on the military base and work on the military bases. As far as health care, I believe that the better alternative is Give the veteran the choice, the option to take health care from any health care provider there is. The government can pay for their insurance since they're a veteran, and then they can go to their local Kaiser, their local HMO, or any other carrier that provides health care, so that the veteran can get health care when they need it without having to go to one place.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
I have a question.
Hi, thanks very much for being here today.
Real quick, just real quick.
Then we have time for 2 more questions.
It's a comment and a question. Thank you everybody for being here today, and I would like for each of you to comment on if you know what UN Agenda 21 is, or ICLEI, and how it affects the states. And we'll start with Mr. Rodrigues.
I'm not familiar with it.
No, I'm not familiar with any.
It absolutely has to go. It came out of the Peace Accord of 1992. It's been in the works for a very long time. Las Vegas is a member of ICLEI, thanks to Mayor Goodman. What you don't know is that this takes away all the individual liberties of individuals, because it just demonstrates that everything is unsustainable. The list of unsustainable items is mind-boggling. You would just not believe this. Agenda 21 is part of a one world order, new world order cabal that's trying to establish everything. If you read the 40 chapters of Agenda 21, you will find out that almost all of them pertain to African nations. They're talking about war-torn nations. We haven't had any warfare on this continent, right, since the Civil War. But they're talking about the things that they want to do. They all talk about war-ravaged nations, and they all are located on the African continent. Most of the adherents to Agenda 21 and ICLEI are all things. There's 550 organizations or communities, in the Northern Hemisphere, North America, who have subscribed to ICLEI, and they are beginning to back off of this. I think there have just been 2 recently who just said, we're no longer going to do this because of the unsustainability of it.
I thought you were going to get to me without anyone else knowing anything about it, and you just stole my thunder. So thanks a lot there, Bill. I appreciate that. I actually did learn about Agenda 21, and I agree that it is far too intrusive. It has no place in America, and we do have to put an end to it and not have anything to do with it. That's the lightning to your thunder.
The last thing I want is the UN running the United States, and that's what basically Agenda 21 is. They're destroying our dams, they're destroying our farmland, they're into everything. They're telling our government basically what to do by programs like when they have meetings with the governors. And they've infiltrated everything, and we're following basically what the UN is saying through Agenda 21. It's got to be removed, and a lot of groups don't even know that they're working with Agenda 21. They're training like police officers, and they're actually learning things that they don't even realize are coming from Agenda 21. So, thank you.
Okay, I have some important comments to make on this. I happen to also be the local head of the John Birch Society, so I have read every bit about this Agenda 21. In a nutshell, without going into about 17,000 pages of stuff that I've had to go through on it. In a nutshell, the intent is to eliminate, as a congressman, I'm sworn to uphold life, liberty, and property. And the intent here is to eventually eliminate private ownership of cars and to prevent building of private residential homes in the future. They want people to just simply have the government own these things or use public transportation. So, yeah, it may be a long way for them to do it, but they're trying to move toward that, the elimination of private ownership of cars and homes.
I believe that our government is here to govern over the United States and not to get itself involved in foreign government and managing foreign affairs for other countries.
Thank you.
Good question.
All right, last question. Thanks for being here. Since I have this group of good Republicans and libertarian, this laissez-faire bunch, I have a market-based question. So, you know, the cry here from Republicans is just get government out of the way.
Amen.
Well, during the Clinton administration, government began to get out of the way of regulating the financial derivatives market. That continued during the Bush administration, and what we got was unregulated derivatives market and a mortgage crisis. I think it's a pretty commonly held belief that banks like Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, and Bank of America were up to their necks in criminal fraud in the way they were bundling these mortgages and selling them to investors and packaging them. The federal government has prosecuted hundreds and hundreds of individuals for mortgage fraud. The federal government has not brought a single criminal action against any financial institution at all. And it sort of confirms what I think people believe, is that these financial institutions are really the one pulling the strings of the US government. I want to know what your thoughts are on that. And if you could give me any assurances that if you're elected to Congress, you will hold these financial institutions to the same laws that govern individuals in this country.
The Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve System is a partner with the federal government established in 1913. And there are 2 or 3 things that are off the table that are never discussed between Republicans and Democrats. One of those is banking. The government supports banking. The answer here is we should not bail out the banks when they make mistakes. We do need an open market system, a free market. Free markets work. The government, and on top of that, we've allowed the banks, ever since the beginning of our country, to use fraud in banking. They allow the banks to loan out 90% of the money they take in, so they tell the people, you can get your $1,000 back anytime you want. Meanwhile, they don't have it in the bank because they've loaned it out. We need to end that fraud.
Okay, you're absolutely right. If you look at the largest contributor to the Obama's campaign last time, and this time it was Goldman Sachs, almost double what the #2 guy, Google, did. But that doesn't mean they don't get involved with it. They actually helped eliminate Lehman Brothers, which was Goldman Sachs' competitor. So they get very involved to help out their people. If you look at the number of people that are in Goldman Sachs. I am also a small businessman in charge of a business-to-business barter organization. My business is starting to boom because of the involvement of people like Goldman Sachs. They're not just now involved in the housing market. They're now getting in big investment in the biofuels. 3 ears of corn at Costco are $4. For the people in my district who are poor, that's very expensive to pay $4 for 3 ears of corn. We're getting into this HR 2454. Dina Titus voted $1 billion for biofuel. Let's turn corn into biofuel. This is all getting into the same thing. This is going to be the next crisis.
Again,
turn your mic on, please.
Oh, sorry. I was in the real estate business, and I saw what Chris Dodd and Barney Frank did with their regulation as far as giving mortgage loans. And that was to make sure every person had a house, even if they couldn't afford to have a house. And I think that's what contributed to the large amount of foreclosures we had in Las Vegas. And so I think that, again, the government interfering with private businesses is one of the biggest problems that we have. Thank you.
People don't go into government to be in business. Therefore, they need to be careful about how many business rules they make and what those rules are. They have to make sure that they think about what kind of rules ought to be out there and then be smart about what rules everybody has to abide by. It goes back to having a vision for what the country should be. Laissez-faire, socialistic, or worse. Do you want to be do you want to have the rules that will apply to everybody, or do you have to have them a little bit different for individuals and people? It has to be thought out, and it has to be thought out very carefully. The United States had been able to do this very successfully for 200 years without all these kinds of crises that occur. I think we need to simplify the rules, make sure that they can work, make sure they can keep us competitive, make sure they get us back to work, and then the government needs to step aside and let people do their job.
Starting with Bill Clinton, when he repealed the Glass-Steagall Act, this is the problem. Banks were able to get into businesses that they should never have been involved with. They should have always been kept separate. That's what caused the stock market crash in 1929. Glass-Steagall tried to correct that, and Clinton repealed it. Ever since then, we've had the same problem. The derivatives market, all of these things that have been developed after the fact should never have happened. Had Glass-Steagall been continued, it would have been fine. Then you come along and you pass Sarbanes-Oxley. Now, I don't know how many of you people are involved with investments, but it's the biggest joke in the world. The SEC goes out and spends millions and millions of dollars to get somebody for a $10,000 violation in Bernie Madoff's case. Where's the equity in that? It just doesn't believe, it's wrong. Yes, I would go after the banking industry big time. I would also try to repeal Dodd-Frank. So Sarbanes-Oxley and Dodd-Frank have to go.
The root cause, that has been mentioned here by my contemporaries here, is the fact that big investments had gotten involved in influencing government. Glass-Steagall, with its faults that it probably had and being a bit old, was still functioning when it got repealed. Basically, the market needs to be free and it needs to be fair. You need to get gambling out, because gambling belongs here and a few other places where it belongs, not in the market of securities and people's money. Also need to have transparency, and that was a problem with these things here, and you need to have eliminating high risk when it's actually being backed by government, government guarantees, which was, again, the reason the derivative thing got out of control.
I would agree with the rest of my colleagues here in that corporations need to be held responsible, just like individuals are held responsible, to abide and to operate within the confines and the boundaries of the law, and that the law needs to be enforced. And that includes not only the executives within corporations, but also politicians and government employees who are privy to that information and who have not done anything to correct it. So I would move or work very diligently to ensure that we bring back integrity and honesty to government. Now, people oftentimes laugh at that, but I believe that as a congressman, and again, I would agree with my colleagues, that our responsibility is to defend the Constitution of the United States of America and not work to undermine its principles and the truths that it espouses. Therefore, I am in favor of holding corporations and government employees, as well as individual citizens, for living and abiding by the laws of our nation.
Excellent questions for our panel members of state and congressional candidates.
Thank you for coming.
This concludes our interviews for CD1. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to have to jump really quickly into our next round of
Melody.
We're going to take a couple minutes to set up.
Charmaine, do you want your...